Okay, so we've gone out, we know about the Visual Basic Editor. We know the differences between a function and a subroutine. So now I want to show you some of the different functions that are built into Microsoft Visual Basic that can make your life easier. And one of the first ones that I'm going to show you is how you can have the user input data or input something for your function or for your routine. And the function that you're going to use is something called an input box. So let's take a look at an input box. I've gone out and I've created a brand new module called mod tester, and inside of this I have a subroutine called tester. This is what we're going to use for this lesson. So I want to create an input box. So let's say prompt the user for data. And what we're going to use is the input box. So input box, and this is a function. So I put in my left paren and it says, what's the prompt? So what I'll do is I'll say, please enter your name. And the nice thing is that since the input box is a function, Visual Basic is showing you what it expects in the tooltip right below it. So it says input box, and right now it says prompt is the one that is selected. So now when I hit comma, it will then say, oh, it says I need the title now. Now the one thing that I want to point out to you is that the only thing the input box really cares about is the prompt. And the way you can tell this is by the tooltip that it gets shown. The prompt, where it says prompt, doesn't have anything around it. It just says prompt. Then you have comma, and then it says title, and title has square brackets around there. Square brackets is an old rule that we used to have back in the old days when documentation was first being created for the technical world. And whenever you see a square bracket, it means it's optional. You don't really have to put it in there. But if you were to put anything in this particular area within the arguments, it's expecting a title. So I'll put name. And then it says, what default would you like to see? So if you'd like to have something already in there, you could physically type something right here and it will enter that text in the input box for you. So that might be like if you're prompting for state and you wanted your state to be the default, then you could put that as the default, and then the user just has to hit enter or click OK and they're done. The other thing you have is the X position, the X pause, which is where is it located, and then you have the Y pause. And so it's basically your grid, and it says, all right, where is this going to be located on your window? And then you have help file and any context. Now notice what's happened is it's now turned red. After a preset amount of time, it says, all right, you haven't put in a valid command. I'm going to change this to red. I'm going to go take that last comma out. I'm going to say that's all I want. I just want to have it say, please enter your name, and then the title will say name. Now, the problem we have right now is that the input box is a function. We know that a function is going to return something back to us. So we have that there. It's sitting by itself, but it's not going to take what the user enters in. It's not going to do anything with it. There's nothing to do. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to create a variable. So define variables. And I'm going to say dim sname as string. And then right here for the input box, I want whatever the user enters in, I want to put it into that string variable. So I'll say sname equals whatever gets returned from this function. So this is a beautiful thing. What I've done is I've created a routine, a subroutine, that uses a function to return something back to me. And you can use functions and other subroutines within a function or a subroutine. So it's a very powerful utility. It's a very powerful environment that you're working in right now. And so now what I might do is I might say active sheet. I'm going to use my my shortcut. So whatever sheet I'm on, and when I hit dot, now whenever you hit dot, you define an object and then you put dot. Then what it's going to do is it's going to show you all of the different properties and methods available to you for that sheet. Watch what happens. When I hit dot, oh well, it's going to make a lie out of me. So instead of using active sheet, I'll just say worksheet. And when I use left paren, I'll just say sheet 1. Why isn't it not showing me anything? Instead, I'm just going to use active cell. So whatever cell I'm in, the value, there we go. So there we see our drop-down list. Now, I want to point out to you something here. I wanted to show you this drop-down list. Everything that I had been typing before, where I said active sheet or worksheet and left paren, those were all valid commands. And that is something that may happen to you while you're working in Visual Basic. There are going to be times where you know for a fact that this is a valid object and the property that you are selecting is also valid, but it's not going to give you any of that type ahead. You will know that you did it correctly when you move off of that row, because what it'll do is it'll still change the text appropriately. But I wanted you to see this. So notice right here for active cell, if I page up, we have different icons next to certain things. So you have activate, and activate has a little green diamond that looks like it's moving. Those are methods. So these are actions that this particular cell can do. So you can activate a cell. You can add a comment. So it's an action that you can perform. Anything that has a little piece of paper with a finger pointing down, that is a property that you can change. So right now, I can say my active cell, and what I want to change is the value. But keep in mind, with a cell, let's think about this for a second. A cell has a value. Now the value is what the user sees. But behind the scenes, you also have something called a formula. So if I took this back and I put dot, I have formula as well. So keep this in mind. There are going to be times where you're going to reference a particular property, and if you don't choose the right one, you're going to get different results. This happened to me the other day, where I was looking at the formula, but I really wanted to see the value. And so my code was never going into a particular routine because it didn't see what I wanted it to see. Once I changed it, it worked fine. So this is something that you need to keep track of. But I want to use the value, so I'll say value equals whatever the user typed in. So what the user types in is sname. So I'm going to say post the value to the active cell. So I'm going to use Control Y, get rid of some of my extra lines. So now I have a routine called tester. So let's go out to Excel and let's test it out. So I'm going to get rid of all this. And I'm going to go to cell A1. I'll go to my developer tab, macros, and I have add header, but I also have tester. So if I take tester and I say run, now I get my input box. And notice it says name at the top, and then it says please enter your name. So I'll type in Tim Miles. I could click OK. And it took whatever I entered in and it automatically posted it into that cell. So now I can put this right here and I can run tester again. This time I just double clicked Timothy Miles. And it posted into that cell. So it works exactly the way I wanted it to. There's one problem that you're going to have with the input box, and this is one of the reasons why I never use the input box. The input box is great, and don't get me wrong, it is a fantastic tool. However, I can put myself in cell A3, go to macros, run tester, and I can type in 7/12/1972. That's not my name, that's a date. My point is that with the input box, it does no validation. It can't do validation. You cannot pop open your input box and then tell Excel that you're expecting a date. Now what you can do is you can have whatever they enter in posted to a date variable, but what's going to happen is it's just going to give you an error if they type in anything other than a date, or if they type in an invalid date. The other thing that can happen is, let's say that you want them to enter in some numeric value between a certain range. Well, you can't do that. The input box is stupid. All it does is it pops open a dialog box and it gives the user an area to type. It gives you the ability to tell them what you'd like them to type, and then an OK and a cancel button. That's it. It doesn't give you anything other than that. So that's where we want to use the user, the user form, where we create our own form, and on that form we can create any validation rules that we want, so that the user can't put in anything that's invalid. But we're going to talk about that in the next lesson. So this is one of the functions that you can use. We can use the input box. And if you just need something rudimentary that they can enter something in, by all means, it's ideal. It's a good function. I don't use it anymore because it doesn't give me the control that I desire.